Story 4. A Special Christmas Present. Every year, people search for that perfect Christmas gift. But sometimes, it's not the gift, but what went into it that makes all the difference.
Every kid needs an Uncle Bob. You know him well. He's the guy who never really grew up. Instead, he always has the wonder, joy, and mischief of a child in his heart. And he knows how to share that with others.
Uncle Bob was never wealthy. He worked as a laborer on the factory floor. It was a tough job, and he was a burly, muscular man because of it. But to a kid, he was the true, gentle giant with a heart of gold. He lived about 20 miles away, but at least twice a month, Uncle Bob, Aunt Jane, and their 3 kids would come out for a Sunday visit.
When they would arrive, the first words out of our Aunt Jane's mouth would always be, "Robert, don't get into mischief with the kids." Often that meant Uncle Bob and us, sometimes as many as 10 to 12 cousins, heading out to the backyard to play, only to sneak away to the shop down the street before dinner. Ice cream in the summer, candy in the fall, and donuts and hot chocolate in winter. Bob would get blamed for ruining our appetites for dinner, but that never stopped us, or him.
Uncle Bob also understood what Christmas meant to us kids. For him, new socks or handkerchiefs were never a Christmas present. Christmas meant toys and special presents. And while Uncle Bob was never wealthy, he always tried to get each of us a little toy or present that was special.
Which leads us to the Christmas when Uncle Bob did his greatest gift of Christmas magic. We were all together, aunts, uncles, and cousins, for Christmas dinner. It was around noon when Uncle Bob, Aunt Jane, and their 3 children arrived. The first thing Aunt Jane said was, "Bob, no playing with the kids' toys until after dinner."
Our cousin, Bob Jr., looked crestfallen and pleaded, "Mom, I wasn't going to." Aunt Jane quickly responded, "I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to your dad." Bob Jr. looked relieved, but Uncle Bob was already on the floor next to the tree, pulling out some toy cars and a tin of Play-Doh.
Things finally settled down and we had dinner. Afterwards, Uncle Bob went out to his car to bring in the presents for the 4 of us. Me, my sister Marie, and cousins Adam and Matthew.
He came in with 3 boxes, 2 for the girls and 1 for me. Matthew looked puzzled, but Uncle Bob reassured him, saying Matthew's present was too big to carry in with all the others. This added even more to Matthew's excitement, as if Christmas wasn't exciting enough for a 6-year-old. Annie and Marie unwrapped their presents, then I did mine. It was a shiny red station wagon, just like the one Uncle Bob drove. We were all very excited with our gifts, but little Matthew was getting even more restless, so Uncle Bob excused himself and headed back out to his car.
When Uncle Bob came back in, he was carrying a huge box wrapped in red paper with little Santa Clauses on it and a giant red ribbon and bow. The box was as big as Matthew, about a 3-foot cube, and Matthew was jumping up and down squealing with excitement while Uncle Bob was grinning from ear to ear.
Matthew yanked off the ribbon and tore off the red paper. Underneath was a blank cardboard box. He pulled open the top and slid out the contents. It was a huge square of newspaper held in place by a string. He cut the string and began unwrapping layer after layer of newspaper. Newspaper was flying everywhere as he frantically sought to unwrap the mysterious and gigantic present.
After 5 minutes or so, Matthew had removed a good 4 inches of newspaper wrappings and reached a box in bright green Christmas paper and a white ribbon. At last, his present. He removed the ribbon and wrapping paper and opened up the cardboard box inside to find
Another huge square of newspaper. Matthew looked puzzled but determined. Again, he dove in, frantically unwrapping the layers of newspaper. Amidst the quiet Christmas music in the background were the sounds of tearing paper, the laughter of us kids, and Matthew's giggles and sighs as each layer passed. Another 4 inches of newspaper and a box wrapped in red and white striped paper appeared. Matthew breathed a sigh of relief, but it wasn't the end. Inside was another square of newspaper, now about a 2-foot cube.
While everyone was howling with laughter, that didn't faze Matthew in the least. Any present wrapped this well had to be really special. With all the enthusiasm and energy a 6-year-old could muster, he tore into the task at hand. After another 4 inches of wrapping paper, there was another box, and inside it, more newspaper. It had now been almost 15 minutes, and Matthew stopped, took a quick drink of root beer and a cookie, then it was back to work. Paper was now flying everywhere as his mission assumed new intensity. 4 more inches of newspaper and another gift-wrapped box, and inside it, more newspaper. Another 4, then another 4, and on it went until over a half hour had passed. Finally, Matthew sat on the floor with a tiny plastic jewelry box, about 2 inches square, wrapped in shiny gold paper, cradled in his hands.
My little brother Matt stopped, took another sip of root beer, then looked at us and smiled. He said, "Well, there can't be much more in here." He unwrapped the box, and inside was a shiny silver dollar, a fortune for a kid back then. Matthew smiled, placed the silver dollar back in the little plastic box, and held it close to his heart. He promised he would always remember his very special present.
Uncle Bob had started wrapping the present before Halloween. At least 3 nights a week, he would head downstairs to the basement with a handful of old newspapers and a roll of Scotch tape to work on the special Christmas surprise. And Matthew did remember the gift. Almost 60 years later, it sits in the same little plastic box on the desk in his home office. It's a reminder to all who were there that Christmas, that Uncle Bob was indeed a man with a heart of gold and the soul of a child. Let us hope we can all share that same spirit this holiday.